What's good with it, Black Goose TV family? I'm back. Double salute as always. It's your boy Fluence Boxing, feeling amazing, feeling great, and I'm coming at y'all with a breaking news announcement when it comes to a new fight added before the end of this year, which means that we're on pace to have a lot of big, great, anticipated fights before the end of this year when it comes to boxing. What am I talking about? Y'all should already know. Y'all see the title below. That's probably why y'all clicked. Y'all see the article over here. Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. is official. It's finalized and it's set for October 8th in London, presented and broadcasted by DAZN. Now, obviously, we all knew that this fight was in the works. They were negotiating. They were trying to make things happen. Originally when it was announced that they were in negotiation and they were waiting for the contract to be signed to put the ink to the paper, obviously I spoke about it. I did a video. Y'all go ahead and check that out if you haven't seen it. But in the last couple of weeks, I got a little bit, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if this fight's going to happen because there was reports coming out saying Chris Eubank Jr., he was not happy with the rehydration clause that was set in the particular paperwork. So he was like, yo, I'm not going to sign it if this stays in. So I'm going to be very interested when we read this article if there's any details regarding that, if it ended up being, removed, the rehydration clause, if it ended up being, at a higher weight or whatever the case may be. I'm very interested to see how they ended up getting this finalized with all the rumors circulating around Chris Eubank Jr. not being happy with the rehydration clause. And then, of course, we had Keith Thurman recently coming out saying, hey, I'll fight you, Conor Benn. Conor Benn acknowledged Keith Thurman. So it almost seemed as if the fight versus Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn was starting to fall apart because it just seemed like they weren't able to contractually agree when it comes to the rehydration weight when it comes to this particular fight. But it seems like they got everything handled. They got everything sorted out. Obviously, and this is where I'm like, damn, am I losing my touch? Because I feel like 3 to 4 years ago, I would have failed for that. I wouldn't have failed for that. Or maybe I just got too much shit going on. I don't know. But 2 or 3 years ago, I would not have failed for Conor Benn calling out Keith Thurman calling him back out, Conor Benn and his team saying, hey, we just need Chris Eubank Jr. to sign the fight. I should have realized this was negotiation tactics from Conor Benn and his team to put pressure on Chris Eubank Jr. to basically say, hey, if you don't sign this fight with the stipulations we presented, we have other options. And they were able to drum up that other options with Keith Thurman because we literally have Keith Thurman right now saying, I'll go over to London. I'll go over to the UK. I'll fight Conor Benn. Let's make it happen because we all know that we all know that Keith Thurman is kind of being sidelined by PBC because he's such a big name that they don't really want him to fight, the who's of anybody. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to be a gatekeeper because Keith Thurman doesn't want to be a gatekeeper. But also, he's a little bit too dangerous and not popular enough to put him against, the top level opposition at 147 that's making and generating the most money because it's like we've been there, done that when it comes to Keith Thurman. Like, yeah, we would love for him to come back and beat Terrence Crawford and beat Errol Spence, but we've already been through that era and we made the money we made with that. There's no way we can generate more money with Keith Thurman with him coming back and taking the belts away from Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. So they understand that. So that's why he's in the position he's in. So, but it's like, man, I'm losing my touch because a couple years ago, I would have called that out. I would have been like, yo, Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. is probably going to happen. It's just a tactic from Conor Benn's, side to try and put pressure on Chris Eubank Jr. to show like, we don't need you, but you may need us. Even though technically we also had Andrade calling out Chris Eubank Jr. offering him a meal. So it's very interesting. There was a lot of different, things coming when it comes to this particular fight. You know what I'm saying? Different opponent, Keith Thurman calling out Conor Benn after Conor Benn called him out. Andrade coming out of nowhere offering a meal to fight Eubank. So there was a lot of variables that made me feel the way I felt when I thought maybe this fight would not end up happening. The fact that the fight ended up happening and being finalized for October 8th, I am surprised. I'm not going to lie to you. Maybe I am losing my touch, but I'm like, that's a good thing, man. That makes, that keeps this shit fresh. But I am surprised this got finalized. I am surprised we have an official date. I didn't think this fight would end up happening with all the shit that was coming out in the recent of the last 2 weeks. But here we are, guys. Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr., October 8th, London, catchweight bout. It makes no sense for either of the fighters. The only thing that makes sense when it comes to this fight is that it makes money in the UK. That's it. And also because Conor Benn can't get any of the 147ers that he wants because a lot of those top level 147ers are dealing with American promotional companies, which obviously they're not really looking towards his own and shit. They're like, hey, man, do what you do. We keep his shit in house. Chris Eubank Jr., we know he fights at that 160 division. He fights at the 160 super middleweight division. Sometimes middleweight he fluctuates. Well, he can't fight a super middle. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of those guys, they're dealing with, see, Chris Eubank Jr. is in a weird spot because he's actually at a weight class where, some of the, top guys, some of the highest paid guys, they actually aren't dealing with the American promotional company, but he still can't get fights. he still can't get those big names. Demetrius Andrade is really the only quote unquote big name at 168, or wandering between middleweight and super middleweight that called his name out. Other than that, there's no one else. So Chris Eubank Jr. is at a weird place. So this fight is happening because Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. are literally in a spot where it's like, we either going to continue to fight guys and people are going to criticize us, or we can do this mega fight at catchweight where if either of us lose, it's not going to affect our career in the totality of things, but we're going to make a lot of money and we might get some new eyeballs on us that wasn't paying attention before. So I understand why the fight is happening. It's not necessarily going on because, it's going to push them forward to where they want to be at. But I understand what it does financially, popularity wise, and just keeping them active and maybe putting a new set of eyes on them that wasn't paying attention before. But it's definitely gonna make them a lot of money now. With that being said, we're gonna get into this article. Hopefully it's gonna tell me some details in regards to the rehydration clause, how this ended up being finalized, etc. If it doesn't, I will be disappointed. I won't lie, but I'm hoping that it's going to shed some light on some things that I didn't know about that I can, start understanding. But before I get into this article, as always, man, hit the like button below. Right next to that joint, subscribe to the channel. A lot of you guys, what I'm saying, y'all, a lot of y'all, majority of you guys watch this shit. A lot of y'all watch a lot of my videos, and you guys are not subscribed. So show some love. Subscribe to the channel. Road to 5K before the end of the year. You already know what it is. Notification gang. And comment on this joint, man. Help your boy with the algorithm. And also, too, I love it when y'all comment because, what I'm saying, I got to see what y'all perspective is. What I'm saying? Let me know if I'm wilding, styling, or on some bullshit. You feel me? So here we go. BoxingScene.com. Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. is finalized October 8th in London. One of the best rivalries in modern British boxing history is officially into the next generation. Boxing Scene has confirmed that plans are finalized for a showdown between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. The long-discussed grudge match is now set to headline on October 8th. It's going to be the DAZN pay-per-view from the O2 in London. The fight will be streamed worldwide on DAZN and DAZN pay-per-view in the UK and Ireland. The pairing comes 29 years almost to the day of the October 1993 rematch between Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank Sr., when the two fought to a draw in front of an announced crowd of 47,000 at Old Trafford Stadium in Manchester. The famed rematch came nearly 3 years after Eubank stopped Benn in the 9th round of the November 1990 WBO middleweight title fight in Birmingham, England. I can't quite believe this is happening, but let me tell you what's happening. Weeks of negotiations coming from Eddie Hearn have led to one of the biggest moments in British boxing. These two born rivals will do battle in an epic matchup that was absolutely everything. Ever since they both turned professional, people talked about this moment, and now it's the time to see the historic rivalry continue. Eubank Sr. dethroned Benn for the WBO middleweight title in their first fight, with the stakes raised for the rematch. Eubank entered with the WBO super middleweight title, aiming to unify with the elder Benn, who held the WBC middleweight title at the time. No belt will be at stake for the second generation bout, which comes at an agreed upon catchweight at 156. Benn is fought at welterweight, dating back to his April 2016 debut, which also takes place at the O2. Eubank Jr., who was just one at the time of the first Eubank Benn fight, and 4 years old at the time of the rematch, is fought primarily at middleweight and super middleweight since turning pro in November 2011. The agreed upon catchweight will mark the lightest that Eubank has fought, more than 2 pounds below his current career low, 158 and 1/4 pounds. In October 2014. The heaviest that Benn has previously weighed for a sanctioned fight was in April 2019 when he officially checked in at 148.5 pounds in an 8-round win over Josef Zaranik. The 25-year-old has weighed between 146 to 146.4 pounds for each of his last events. This fight is for my legacy and was an opportunity I felt I couldn't pass up, said Conor Benn. My team and I had other options on the table, as I am currently ranked top 5 with all the governing bodies at welterweight, and no doubt I'm looking for a world championship fight very soon. But this fight is embedded with so much history, and I know it's the one the public really wants to see. To me, this fight is personal. It's more than titles and rankings. This is unfinished business between our families. Born Rivals is the perfect calling for this fight because we had always been associated, and I've always been asked if we'd ever fight, and now I can't wait for the world to be able to watch what this does. Watch what we can make happen. All I know is that from my side, this will be an all-out war, last man standing kind of fight. Neither will give up until the last bell rings. I won't be looking to take this to the scorecards, though. This will be explosive. This will be explosive from the off. I'm so up for this. Eubank Jr. has weighed at or just under the super middleweight limit during his last 6 fight campaigns in that particular division. The 32-year-old has spent much of his year calling out several big names, but mainly fixated on domestic grudge matches with Benn and former welterweight titleist Kell Brook. I grew up watching their legendary battles and always wanted to emulate that, and I find my own arch nemesis, or I should say my own arch nemesis, could be now Conor Benn. We will find out, said Eubank Jr. He has walked the same path as I have. I know his struggle, living in the shadow of a legend and trying to break out his shadow and make his own name. If we can beat me, he will be made. In other words, you beat me, your name is as big as you want it to be, and he will never walk in his father's shadow again. It's a fight that's going to spark the imagination of the British public. That's what I'm happy about in terms of anticipation, legacy, and hype. It's the biggest fight of my career. So that's the case. We didn't get any words, unfortunately, on the stipulations of the contract. We didn't get, whether or not They ended up changing the rehydration clause. I'm going to go ahead and take a wild guess and say that they probably did change the rehydration clause by a couple pounds, so Eubank Jr. felt comfortable. But the fight is happening. It's happening at catch weight. There's no stakes. There's no belts, nothing like that, other than the fact that they're kind of just replicating what their fathers did. Obviously, their fathers, they fought at a much higher, it was much higher stakes when they fought because belts were on the line. But, I'm still excited for this fight. I still think there's a lot on the line when it comes to legacy. I don't think it derails either one of their careers. Whoever, if one of them, loses in either terrible fashion, bad fashion, or just loses, slightly on the boards, it doesn't affect their careers because we're talking about a catchweight fight. But it's entertainment. It's a great fight before the end of the year. I think we're going to enjoy it. We're going to be in the moment. But I think once the next year starts and they go back to their respective weight classes, regardless who wins or loses, we're not going to really care. But during the time, it's going to be a mega fight and it's going to generate the money that they believe. Let me know what you guys think, BlakGooseTV family, on this particular fight, man. Is this something you guys are excited for? Who do you think is going to win? How do you think it's going to go? Do you think this is a fair matchup? Or do you think this is unnecessary at the end of the day, man? You already know I'm probably going to drop that same question in the community board, so y'all look out for that. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, road to 5K before the end of the year on Arnold Schwarzenegger side of the game. I'll be back, but with more boxing, man. Stay blessed, not stressed. You already know the game.